There's a company that is almost definitely a part of your daily life. I mean, whether you're driving your car, using a power tool, or even just opening your fridge. And yet, you might not even realize it. We're talking about Bosch, a 130-year-old giant that's built on a principle that feels more relevant today than ever before: trust.
To really get a sense of just how much Bosch is a part of our world, just imagine for a second you had X-ray vision. If you looked inside almost any modern car, this is what you'd see. Bosch tech is everywhere, from the super complex engine management and fuel injection systems to the safety features we all rely on, like anti-lock brakes and stability control. They are, and this is no exaggeration, engineered right into the DNA of today's vehicles.
And this ad, it just nails the point. Back in 1998, Bosch ran this campaign with a really simple but powerful message. The only car you're going to find without any Bosch components is a toy car. It's such a clever way to show just how deep their technology runs in the automotive world.
So, that brings us to the big question, right? How does a company go from this tiny local workshop to a global powerhouse that pretty much every automaker on the planet depends on? Well, the answer isn't just about amazing engineering. It's about a core philosophy that was set in stone over a century ago.
To understand Bosch today, we have to go back, way back to the very beginning and meet the founder, Robert Bosch. See, he wasn't just an inventor, he was a visionary who had this incredibly clear set of principles that would go on to shape the company for the next 130 years and, well, beyond.
And this one quote, this is the key to everything. Better to lose money than trust. For Robert Bosch, the long-term trust of his customers, his partners, and his employees was literally the most valuable asset his company could ever have. And this wasn't just some catchy marketing slogan, it was the #1 rule for every single business decision.
So, in the early days, the company starts out in 1886 as a small workshop in Stuttgart. Just over a decade later, in 1897, Bosch takes this huge step by adapting one of his ignition devices for a car. But the real game changer? That came in 1902 when his engineer Gottlob Honnold perfected the high-voltage magneto-ignition system. This one invention was about to change everything.
So why was ignition such a big deal? Well, at the turn of the 20th century, getting a reliable spark to ignite the fuel in an engine was, as the automotive pioneer Carl Benz himself called it, the trickiest problem facing the entire industry. Early cars weren't just unreliable, they were actually pretty dangerous. I mean, the existing solutions were just terrible. On one hand, you had glow tube ignition, which involved a literal naked flame, a massive fire hazard. On the other hand, you had battery ignition, but the batteries were so weak they'd die after just a few dozen kilometers. The Bosch Magneto solved both problems. It was safe, it was reliable, and, this is the genius part, it used the engine's own motion to generate electricity, creating a perfectly timed high-voltage spark.
And here it is. This beautiful piece of engineering basically made the automobile practical for the very first time. It was a complete system that automakers could finally trust. By solving the industry's single biggest problem with a high-quality, reliable product, Bosch wasn't just selling a component, he was selling confidence. He was building that trust that he valued so much.
But that philosophy of trust went so much deeper than just making good products. Robert Bosch actually structured his entire company around it. He wove his values into the very fabric of the business in ways that were honestly decades ahead of their time.
For example, he believed that trusting his employees was just as important as having customers trust him. Get this, he was one of the very first industrialists in Germany to introduce the 8-hour workday. This was at a time when 10 or 12-hour days were totally normal. And this wasn't just about being a good guy, it was a smart business decision built on the belief that a respected, well-rested workforce would do higher quality work. And maybe his most radical move was how he set up the company's ownership. It is a truly unique setup. He made sure that after he passed away, the vast majority of the company's shares, we're talking over 90%, would be held by a charitable foundation.
Now here's the brilliant part. The Robert Bosch Stiftung, or foundation, gets almost all of the company's profits to fund social projects, but has no voting rights. This was a masterstroke that ensures two things. First, the company's profits serve a wider social purpose. And second, the business stays independent, totally insulated from the pressures of short-term shareholder demands. This lets it focus on long-term innovation and sustainable growth.
So that foundation of trust and long-term thinking didn't just fade away. No, it created a culture of continuous innovation that is still the company's engine today.
The company's slogan today, "Invented for Life," is a direct echo of Robert Bosch's original principles. The goal isn't just to invent new technology for the sake of it, but to create innovations that solve real-world problems and actually improve people's lives in a tangible, reliable way.
And you can see this legacy of progress so clearly in their innovations. From the very first complete automotive lighting system back in 1913, which was a huge leap in safety, all the way to the advanced Latronic system in 1991, which was 2.5 times brighter than old halogen lights. It's this constant, decades-long evolution driven by that very same core mission.
Today, that legacy has evolved into a really clear three-part strategy. First up is open innovation. They don't just work in a bubble. They build trust by collaborating with top universities and industry partners. Second, eco-innovation. They're pouring hundreds of millions into sustainable tech like electric powertrains and even sharing their eco-patents for public use. And third, they extend their own values outward, making sure their global partners stick to the same high standards on human rights and environmental protection. It's Robert Bosch's philosophy just scaled for the 21st century.
And this brings us to one final, kind of provocative question. In a world that's so often dominated by quarterly earnings and short-term gains, is it possible that a 130-year-old philosophy, one built on long-term trust, social responsibility, and a purpose beyond just profit, is actually the most modern and sustainable business plan of all?